Thank you for watching Army Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all news resources following other news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, African, Asian channels and also by news agencies, Reuters, AFP, AP. Now the headlines. Expanded background checks for gun purchases in America. O.J. Simpson, the sad story of America, is died of cancer. Japan, Philippines, America come together against China. U.S. warning of imminent Iran attack on Israeli soil. Israel vowed to fight back. Russian border region with Kazakhstan is under flood waters. Ukraine tough recruitment regulations. Ukraine said Russian attack damage electricity plant. Mali of Africa ban media activities. Former interpreter charged with bank fraud in California. Sumo wrestler of Hawaii is dead in Tokyo. Now the news in detail.
.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As negotiations over Gaza's ceasefire continue in Cairo, Israeli forces killed 3 sons and 4 grandchildren of Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh in an airstrike in central Gaza on Wednesday. Haniyeh spoke to Al Jazeera shortly after the attack.
They believe that if they kill or assassinate leaders or their next of kin, that we will abandon our people, that we will abandon our resistance. They are mistaken. This noble blood that is spilled, including my own children, will harden our resolve, make us more defiant, more adamant to continue to march on this road, the road of struggle and resistance, until we win our freedom and the lawful rights of the Palestinian peoples are restored.
Ismail Haniyeh lives in Qatar. His sons and grandchildren were killed as they were reportedly traveling to a gathering to mark the end of Ramadan in Gaza. Across Gaza, Israel's 6-month-long assault has cast a dark shadow on the holiday of Eid.
We haven't become accustomed to this life and we won't get used to it. We're just trying to. This Eid has come without any new clothes for the young ones. No money given to children and no joy. Those who have lost people, lost homes. What Eid is this? This is the Eid of destruction, not the Eid of joy.
In other news from Gaza, a UNICEF aid convoy was hit by Israeli gunfire today as it attempted to deliver life-saving supplies to children in northern Gaza. UNICEF said 3 rounds of gunfire hit the convoy. Israeli forces then refused to allow the aid convoy to head north, even though the UNICEF trip had been authorized. In related news, World Central Kitchen has revealed one of its aid workers was gravely injured last week in an Israeli airstrike on a mosque. The attack occurred just minutes before an Israeli drone repeatedly struck a World Central Kitchen convoy, killing 7 aid workers in an attack that sparked worldwide condemnation. In other news from Gaza, a top U.S. official has acknowledged a majority, if not all, Palestinians are facing starvation in Gaza. David Satterfield, the U.S. humanitarian envoy in Gaza, made the remark during an online forum hosted by the American Jewish Committee.
There is an imminent risk of starvation for the majority, if not all, the 2.2 million population of Gaza. This is not a point in debate. It is an established fact which the United States, its experts, the international community, its experts, assess and believe is real.
The top U.S. commander in the Middle East is heading to Israel today amidst growing fears Iran may soon launch an attack in retaliation for Israel's bombing of the Iranian consulate in Damascus last week. On Wednesday, President Biden said the U.S. commitment to Israel's security is ironclad. In Arizona, Republican lawmakers have blocked efforts by Democrats to repeal an 1864 law that bans nearly all abortions in Arizona. The move came a day after Arizona's Supreme Court revived the 160-year-old law, which was approved before Arizona was a state and before women could even vote. The court issued its decision a day after Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump said abortion should be decided by the states. On Wednesday, Trump criticized the Arizona ruling, saying the ban goes too far. We'll go to Arizona later in the broadcast. President Biden is hosting a trilateral summit today at the White House with Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as the U.S. moves to expand its military presence around the South China Sea. Earlier today, protesters gathered in Manila to denounce the expanding U.S. presence in the Philippines.
We are being used as pawns by the Americans. They are bringing their military here through the 9 enhanced defense cooperation agreement bases, which they're planning to increase to 22. They're concentrating their machinery here, their bombs, aircraft, all focused on China. What does this mean? They will bring danger to the Philippines and make us a target.
In other news from the region, the U.S. has announced plans to expand a Navy base in Papua New Guinea, where China has also attempted to increase its footprint. In other news from Asia, South Korea's conservative prime minister and other top presidential aides offered to resign after the ruling People Power Party suffered a major defeat in parliamentary elections. Russia is continuing to attack critical parts of Ukraine's energy infrastructure by bombing a large electricity plant near Kyiv and several other power facilities. Following the strikes, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky repeated his call for Western nations to provide Ukraine with more air defense. More than 110,000 people in Kazakhstan and Russia have been forced to flee their homes as the region faces its worst flooding in decades. Officials warn the flooding may worsen as the Ural River continues to rise from fast melting snow and ice due to rising temperatures. In other climate news, scientists have revealed new heat records have been set in the ocean every day for the past year. March 2024 broke records for both air temperature and ocean surface temperatures. Ecuador's former vice president, Jorge Glass, has begun a hunger strike to protest his recent arrest on corruption charges. He was detained Friday when Ecuadorian security forces raided Mexico's embassy in Quito, where he'd been living since December. The Organization of American States and other international bodies have condemned the raid. Glass has denied the charges against him. The Environmental Protection Agency in the United States has for the first time placed limits on 6 types of PFAS chemicals in drinking water. The so-called forever chemicals have been linked to cancer, infertility, and thyroid problems. The EPA has also issued new rules aimed at reducing toxic emissions from more than 200 chemical plants. Many of the plants are located in low-income and communities of color in Texas and an area of Louisiana known as Cancer Alley. President Biden said Wednesday he's considering a request from Australia to drop the prosecution of WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange. Today marks 5 years since Assange was locked up in London's Belmarsh prison facing extradition to the United States for publishing classified documents that exposed U.S. war crimes. Earlier today, Reporters Without Borders repeated its call for Assange to be immediately released. Go to democracynow.org to see all our interviews with Julian Assange and about him. The former chief financial officer of the Trump Organization, Alan Weisselberg, has been sentenced to 5 months in prison for lying under oath during Donald Trump's civil fraud trial. Meanwhile, another appellate judge has rejected Trump's latest attempt to delay the start of his own criminal hush money trial, which begins Monday. Independent presidential candidate Cornel West has tapped Melina Abdullah to be his running mate. Abdullah is a professor and a longtime organizer with the Black Lives Matter movement. Cornel West called her, quote, one of the great freedom fighters of her generation. In other election news, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has fired a staffer after she publicly said Kennedy is running as an independent presidential candidate in part to help Donald Trump win in November. Rita Palma, who served as Kennedy's New York State director, was recently filmed describing how President Biden could fail to reach the needed 270 electoral votes if Kennedy manages to win in a state like New York.
The Kennedy voter and the Trump voter, the enemy, our mutual enemy is Biden. Give those 28 electoral votes to Bobby rather than to Biden, thereby reducing Biden's 270. And we all know how that works, right? 270 wins the election. If you don't get to 270, if nobody gets to 270, then Congress picks the president. So who are they going to pick? Who are they going to pick? If it's a Republican Congress, they'll pick Trump. So we're rid of Biden either way.
Police at Rutgers University have launched an investigation after an Islamic center at the school was vandalized on the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. Vandals smashed windows, broke TVs, damaged artwork, and destroyed a Palestinian flag. Meanwhile, a Palestinian-American law student at the University of California, Berkeley has accused a professor of assaulting her during a backyard dinner. A video of the incident shows law professor Catherine Fisk grabbing a microphone away from the student, Malaka Fenna, as she attempted to speak out against Israel's war in Gaza.
Where millions of Muslims around the world fast, not only from Israel, fast, not only in Israel. We have attorneys. We have attorneys. Okay, you don't have to excuse me.
Please leave our house. You are guests at our house.
That's my First Amendment right.
No, this is my house.
National lawyers go.
The incident occurred during a backyard dinner hosted by UC Berkeley School of Law Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, who's married to Professor Catherine Fisk. In other academic news, the University of Cologne has rescinded a job offer to the Jewish-American philosopher Nancy Fraser because she signed a letter against Israel's assault on Gaza. Fraser, who teaches at the New School here in New York, said, quote, I was canceled in the name of German responsibility for the Holocaust. This responsibility should also apply to Jewish people. But in Germany, it's narrowed down to the state policy of the currently ruling Israeli government. Philo-Semitic McCarthyism sums it up quite well, a way to silence people under the pretext of supposedly supporting Jews, she said. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.
Tonight, the life and trials of O.J. Simpson, one of America's most polarizing figures. The rise and fall of a football hero.
O.J. Simpson probably thought that he was invincible.
And a defendant in a murder case called the trial of the century.
It's like a spy novel. Based on what?
2 top security officers launched a lawsuit claiming they were unfairly linked to foreign interference.
You chose greed.
Also, the head of Bell Canada testifies over massive job cuts.
Bell continues to invest in news and media.
Plus, new images of the stranded whale in BC with preparations underway for a precarious rescue. And putting love on the map.
We aren't Vegas, obviously, but we do have a chapel of love now.
Getting to the heart of one village's plan to host a whole lot of weddings.
CTV National News with Omar Sajidina. Reporting tonight, Heather Butts.
Good evening. The world is reacting tonight to the death of O.J. Simpson, the football star and actor whose televised trial for the murder of his ex-wife and her friend captivated millions in the 1990s. Simpson's family announced his death today, saying he succumbed to his battle with cancer. The controversial figure at the center of what many call the trial of the century, dead at 76. Here's CTV's Joy Malvin.
From football star to Hollywood fame, O.J. Simpson was an all-American hero.
And this is Tree Sweet, the only juice I grew up on.
Beloved until the brutal murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman outside Simpson's L.A. home. The marriage rocky, allegations of domestic abuse.
I don't want to stay on the line. Going to beat the shit out of it.
O.J. insisted he was innocent, but went on the run.
911, what are you reporting? This is AC. I have O.J. in the car.
TV networks carried Simpson's stunning slow-motion car chase live. Eventually surrendering, he was charged with the savage stabbings.
Ron and Nicole were butchered.
In what was called the trial of the century, more than 100 million people watched, gripped by every detail and those infamous gloves.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Trial lawyers became celebrities. The sensational case captivated and divided America. And when the verdict came,
the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
Celebrations erupted. Others left in shock.
You know, it was a very divisive case. People hated him, hated me for representing him. It was divided along racial lines.
Simpson was cleared but never recaptured his fame. Found guilty in a wrongful death civil suit by the victims' families, ordered to pay $33 million, Simpson paid little of it. Struggling to remake his life, he wrote a hypothetical book, If I Did It, losing the rights to the Goldman family, who published it as a confession. Of Simpson's death threat, Goldman said, "It's no great loss to the world. It's a further reminder of Ron being gone." And Cato Kalin, who rose to fame as a witness, added,
"To the family of the beautiful Nicole Brown Simpson, may we always cherish her memories."
Ultimately, Simpson did do serious jail time in Nevada for armed robbery involving sports memorabilia he said was his. Paroled after 9 years.
As I said, I've done my time. I just like to get back to my family and friends.
In a video before his death, he told fans,
"I'm back on that golf course."
A legend whose rise and fall from grace is an American tragedy. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Washington.
Two men who spent their careers putting themselves in harm's way to protect Canadians are launching a lawsuit against the federal government. The security officials say they have been wrongfully linked to a foreign interference case at a tremendous cost. CTV's Judy Trin has the exclusive details.
These two men have more than 6 decades of policing experience. Peter Merrifield is with the RCMP, while Paul McNamara worked with Vancouver Police doing undercover work.
I've done everything. Homicides, drugs, gangs, stock market frauds.
In 2021, both men were flagged by CSIS and lost their security clearance.
Warrants on my emails, warrants on my phones, financial productions to my banks, potential wiretaps.
At the time, McNamara was head of security for the U.S. Embassy and its consulates. He lost his job.
This is investigation by gossip and rumor. Nobody came and spoke to me. CSIS never came and spoke to me, and unfortunately, even the U.S. Department of State didn't interview me when they terminated me.
In this lawsuit filed against the federal government, both McNamara and Merrifield claim that CSIS wrongly linked them to Bill Miker, who's accused of working for China. The two men allege that the government feared Miker was trying to recruit them, suspicions that arose during the arrest of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou and the detention of the two Michaels, while Merrifield was head of security for the Prime Minister.
I'm standing next to the Prime Minister every day. I'm driving him around. I'm listening to his phone calls and his briefings. I would be deeply concerned if I thought that some foreign interference had penetrated that person.
In a previous interview with CTV News, Miker denied being a spy and said that before his arrest in Canada last year, he checked in with CSIS overseas.
I'm a patriot, not a traitor.
McNamara believes CSIS revoked his security clearance, believing he met with Miker in China, a meeting he says never happened.
But to say I'm a national security threat, it makes me angry. I'll challenge you here, and I will go to my grave proving that I am not a national security threat and that I lost my job through inept investigations, through people who had already drawn their conclusions and wrote the report.
Paul McNamara has been unable to get a job for the past 2 years. Peter Merrifield was able to regain his security clearance after intense vetting. Both men are suing the federal government for $5.5 million. As for CSIS, it's not commenting on a matter before the courts. Heather.
Judy Trin for us in Ottawa. Thank you. Canada's top court won't hear arguments from victims' families urging them to release prison and parole documents concerning serial killer Paul Bernardo. The families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey have spent years fighting to expose the confidential information used to decide Bernardo's prospects for parole. The federal court says the release will be a total invasion of Bernardo's privacy. Bernardo is serving a life sentence for kidnapping, sexual assault, and the murder of the two teenagers. There were tough questions on Parliament Hill today about job cuts at Bell Canada. The company let go thousands of workers earlier this year, along with ending multiple newscasts. Bell is the parent company of CTV. Its CEO defended those decisions today at a House of Commons committee. CTV's Adrian Gabriel on the testimony.
So having
Mr. Vivek, there's just one question.
A tense hearing with Canada's largest telecom company on the hot seat.
You have gutted local newsrooms in this country. Don't tell me you've added.
In February, Bell Canada, the parent company of CTV News, announced it was cutting 4,800 positions from its workforce, canceling multiple CTV newscasts and selling 45 of its 103 radio stations. Today, Bell's CEO, Mirko Bibic, testified on Parliament Hill, where he faced pointed questions.
Is it justified that you just laid off 6,100 employees in the last 8 months when you have received hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government, and it is a company worth $40 billion?
I would think that we want strong Canadian companies that can continue to employ tens of thousands of Canadians.
You could have chosen to prioritize workers with that money, but you chose greed. How do you justify that?
We are continuing to lower wireless prices each and every day. If we don't have Canadian companies that grow and that invest in critical infrastructure like ours and that create jobs, we're going to have a massive problem in the country, and that goes for media as well. Ahead of today's hearing in Ottawa, Bell issued this press release titled Facts Matter, saying in part that Canada's traditional media sector is in crisis due to changing consumer habits, technological disruptions, shifting advertiser demand, and vigorous competition from foreign streamers and global web giants. Without a Canadian broadcasting system, there will be no news, except maybe the CBC.
News was always a money loser. These were a condition of license when they received the license to begin with.
Communications professor Gregory Taylor believes Bell Media has both a moral and regulatory responsibility.
We're losing a lot of really good journalists who provide an essential function. This cuts to the core of what we need in a democratic society.
The recent BCE job cuts amount to the largest number of layoffs at the company in decades. Bell says without significant regulatory overhaul, the broadcast industry is in peril. Heather.
Adrian, thank you. Just a day after the Prime Minister defended his decisions at the inquiry into foreign interference, he said it's his job to question contradictions in intelligence.
No leader should simply be a passive receiver of information and intelligence. We have a role to play in asking questions.
But the leader of the opposition took aim at Justin Trudeau's testimony.
The Prime Minister was asked why he didn't do anything about this interference, even though he was warned in briefing notes, is that he doesn't read briefing notes.
An initial report following the inquiry is expected next month. One of the country's leading charities says it's reached a tipping point and is desperate for help. The Ottawa mission can no longer keep up with the influx of asylum seekers, many sent directly to the organization upon arriving in the country because there is not enough housing. CTV's Andy Bertrand-Oliver reports.
Lunch at the Ottawa mission is always crowded.
Would you like some soup?
The shelter operates at more than 100% capacity, and demand is showing no signs of slowing.
We have a number of people coming in needing accommodation. There's just no housing for them. There's no meals for them. So we're at overcapacity in terms of our beds. We're at overcapacity in terms of the number of meals we're having to provide for people.
The mission isn't alone. Across the country, shelters are struggling to keep up. They say more asylum seekers are needing help at the same time as more people are finding themselves out of a home because of rising rents and rent evictions.
We expect between 260 and 300,000 Canadians will experience homelessness this year. This level of homelessness I don't think we've ever seen.
Fixing that problem requires more affordable housing, but right now demand is outstripping supply, and the parliamentary budget officer says Canada needs to build an extra 1.3 million homes to close that gap by 2030.
We all have to live somewhere, so if it's difficult to find appropriate housing, then it drives up the cost of housing.
To help, Ottawa today announced it is allowing first-time homebuyers with insured mortgages to amortize over 30 years when purchasing newly built homes. They'll also be able to withdraw $60,000 from their RRSP, and those withdrawals will have an extra 3-year grace period before interest charges apply.
The measures we announced today are really going to help young Canadians.
But for those struggling to stay off the streets, Tilly fears Ottawa's recent promises won't help.
The language we're hearing now is, wow, we're in a housing crisis. Yeah, welcome to it. We're seeing it.
Housing advocates want the federal government to introduce a housing benefit that would help keep more people in their homes. They also want to see additional assistance so newcomers can stay out of the shelter system. Heather?
All right, Annie, thanks. A popular social media app is rolling out tools it says will protect kids and fight sexual extortion. The move by Instagram comes as companies face growing criticism for not doing enough to enhance the safety of users. CTV's Sarah Plowman has more.
Seconds is all it takes to send a nudo, but then face blackmail. A nightmare that's trapped teenagers like William Doiron, preyed on by criminals on social media. The 16-year-old took his own life. Grieving parents have pushed for tech giants to prop up defenses. Today, Instagram says it is, testing a new tool that will blur photos detecting nudity in direct messages and urge users to think twice before sending them. The feature will be on by default for anyone under 18. Adults will be alerted to opt in. Doiron's mother believes it's a good step.
It's going to make the job worse for people trying to get new pictures from kids, so that's a good thing.
This cybersecurity expert says it's about time.
It's good, but it's a tourniquet on a massive wound. It's the start of what needs to happen.
RCMP calls extortion affecting young people a public safety crisis. In the past 18 months, the Canadian Centre for Child Protection received 6,000 reports.
I think we have to be cautious in terms of how we're applauding these efforts that should have been instituted a decade ago. So let's give them a slow clap. But really?
Instagram says it's also developing a way to identify accounts that may actually be sextortion scammers and stop those users from contacting teenagers even if they follow one another. Heather.
Thanks, Sarah. Coming up, the former interpreter accused of stealing from a baseball star.
Mr. Mitsuhara used and abused that position of trust.
Millions stolen from Shohei Ohtani to pay off gambling debts. Plus, castaways once stranded on a deserted island, now saved. U.S. officials have outlined federal charges against the former interpreter of Shohei Ohtani, accusing him of betraying his trust and robbing Ohtani of millions of dollars to pay off gambling debts. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
$16 million in less than 3 years. That's how much money U.S. officials say was stolen from Shohei Ohtani by his interpreter, a person he trusted.
Mr. Mitsuhara had unique access to Mr. Ohtani's finances. Mr. Mitsuhara used and abused that position of trust in order to take advantage of Mr. Ohtani.
Ibe Mitsuhara has been charged with federal bank fraud, accused of transferring money from an account he helped set up for the LA Dodgers star to pay for bets with an illegal gambling ring.
And over time, Mr. Mitsuhara's bets became larger and larger in amounts.
The U.S. attorney says Mitsuhara went to elaborate lengths to access Ohtani's account, even impersonating the Japanese baseball star to bank employees.
And thereby convinced the bank to approve large wire transfers of large amounts of money to the bookmakers.
Last month, Mitsuhara was abruptly fired by the Dodgers. Initially, he told ESPN that Ohtani had paid off his gambling debts, but changed his story the next day, saying Ohtani had no knowledge and never transferred any money. There have been questions over whether Ohtani was involved in sports gambling, but the Justice Department says he is considered a victim, and there's no evidence he was aware of what his interpreter was up to.
The criminal complaint that was filed today definitively shows that money, the $16 million that's in question, was in fact stolen.
This investigation began as part of a larger probe into illegal gambling. Mitsuhara says he never bet on baseball, something investigators confirm. Still, the MLB is conducting its own review, as it is illegal for players and team employees to bet on the game. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
To a remarkable rescue now, the U.S. Coast Guard saved 3 fishermen from a remote island in the Pacific. Their boat was damaged by rough waves in Micronesia. They used palm tree branches to spell out signs for help. It was spotted by a Navy jet. They survived for more than a week before being found. And a daring Canadian rescue after the break, putting the final steps in motion to move a baby whale. The pieces are falling into place for a high-stakes rescue of a baby orca, but it carries a lot of risk. CTV's Andrew Johnson is in the remote coastal community tonight.
It's one of the final dress rehearsals for a daring rescue. A large sling being hoisted out of the water and onto a waiting truck. When it's happening for real, there will be a 2-year-old killer whale calf inside, and there may be only one chance to get it right. Just a few hundred meters away, unaware of all of the fuss being made over her, we spotted the little orca this morning. The whale was coming up for air about every 10 minutes or so. The spot she's surfacing today is not far from where the whale's mother became beached at low tide and died. That was close to 3 weeks ago. Experts fear the calf will struggle to find enough food and can't survive in the lagoon. That's why some of the world's leading marine mammal experts, veterinarians, and environmental consultants have traveled to the tiny town of Zavalis on Vancouver Island's rugged west coast. Their plan is to reunite the orca the local Hadasat First Nation has named Brave Little Hunter with her family pod. The whale will be corralled with a net, taken in the sling by truck to a waiting boat, then transferred to a net pen out in the open ocean. The hope is the orca's remaining family members, which include a grandmother and an aunt, will be nearby. The original timeline to pull this off ended today. We're told the tricky rescue has a lot of moving parts, and it's likely a one-shot deal, so the pressure is on to get this right and keep the people involved on the water, as well as the whale, safe. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Zavalis, BC.
And an update on a determined 5-year-old girl from Regina who took on City Hall.
Nobody wants to be left out.
Lake Turnbull convinced council to put $175,000 towards an elevator to make a water slide and an outdoor pool fully accessible. More fundraising will be needed.
Tonight, O.J. Simpson, the former NFL legend whose murder trial captivated the nation, has died. His death coming nearly 3 decades after he was acquitted in the brutal murders of his ex-wife.
And will be needed. But Blake's mom celebrated the win, saying the pair survived 9 hours at the meeting on chips and leftover chicken balls. Nice work, Blake. Still to come, a small town with a big heart, tying the knot in a chapel of love. A small Saskatchewan community is taking its name to heart. Hopeful couples will travel to tie the knot in the village of love. Here's CTV's Alison Bamford.
For years, happy couples have traveled from near and far to tie the knot in love.
A couple came down, their last name was Love, and got married in love.
Sometimes at the Jamboree grounds, others get hitched outside the post office. And when couples aren't passing through, their postcards and wedding invitations are, just to be stamped with the seal of love.
We will have wedding invitations come in throughout the year. On the heart, it says Love at First Sight, which is actually the title for the history book here in Love.
In a town where all signs point to love, there was one big thing missing.
We aren't Vegas, obviously, but we do have a chapel of love now here.
A 2-year community endeavor has transformed a donated train station bunkhouse into this.
We wanted to have a venue where they could come no matter what the weather condition was, and a place that would be nice for them to get married in, so we decided to build the chapel.
The chapel opened late last summer and was only able to host one wedding, but the village is hopeful the wedding bells will ring louder this year in its first full season.
We have a couple from Quebec that just booked in for May 25th.
And when they come to visit, the community is likely to live up to its name.
I think if you come, you might come out of curiosity for the name, but if you stay, that's not why you're staying. You're staying for everything else that is here. And it's a fairly welcoming town.
A small town with big hearts everywhere you turn. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Love.
A place called Love. That's our newscast for this Thursday. I'm Heather Butts. Thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
O.J. Simpson dies at 76 from prostate cancer.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
The controversial legacy of the former football star who was acquitted of double murder in the so-called trial of the century. The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We begin tonight with the death of O.J. Simpson at the age of 76 from prostate cancer. The former football star turned sportscaster, pitchman, and actor saw his career and legacy come crashing down after he was accused of double murder. Simpson was famously acquitted for the brutal stabbing deaths of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman in 1995. There was never another suspect, and prosecutors presented 62 incidents of abusive behavior by Simpson towards his ex-wife. The TV networks followed every moment of the case. It's estimated that 95 million people watched the infamous slow-speed chase along a California freeway, and many remember to this day where they were when they heard the jury's not guilty verdict. It was a shock to the nation. Simpson's fall from grace captivated the country and much of the world, but his legal troubles were far from over. He was later convicted of robbery for trying to steal memorabilia he claimed belonged to him. CBS's John Blackstone covered the Simpson case for CBS, and he'll start us off tonight.
In the complicated life of O.J. Simpson, he was so many things.
Please, throw down your guns.
A major celebrity.
Perhaps the greatest running back of all time.
A sports hero. A symbol of justice denied. A symbol of injustice in a divided America.
O.J. broke the single-season rushing record.
He was the football legend who could outrun just about anyone. But what happened next was truly stunning.
Mr. Simpson is a fugitive of justice right now.
That riveting slow-speed Bronco chase.
This has been a dramatic story that has gripped this city.
After Simpson was charged for the murders of his former wife Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman.
Worst nightmare of my life.
The trial of the century, as it was called, galvanized the nation. Every bit of it televised live, with its parade of colorful characters, allegations, racist police, and that glove, the one prosecutors say he used in the killings, which O.J., to great dramatic effect, tried to try on.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
When it came time for the verdict,
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
A split screen of passionate emotions, from stunned disbelief to jubilation, especially in communities still reeling from riots born out of intense distrust of the Los Angeles police. Simpson's first live interview after the verdict was with BET News anchor Ed Gordon.
Did you indeed commit those murders?
No.
I certainly think he tried his best to change minds. I think at some point he really knew it was a futile position, that those who believed him to be a murderer would never change their minds.
He may have avoided jail time, but he could never avoid justice. 2 years after his acquittal, a civil jury ordered him to pay $33 million to the victims' families. They received just a fraction of that. And then, an armed robbery at a Las Vegas hotel. There was OJ in the middle of it all, leaving with mementos he claimed had been stolen from him.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal anything from anybody, and I didn't know I was doing anything illegal. I thought I was confronting friends.
But this time,
Guilty of first-degree kidnapping.
he would serve nearly a decade in a Nevada prison. His last years were quiet ones, out of the spotlight, but never far from the public's fascination, continuing to this day, of a life and legacy both famous and decidedly infamous.
The door turned on Mr. Simpson from being American hero to being arguably the most vilified man in America.
And John Blackstone joins us now. John, you were there. You covered that nearly year-long Simpson trial. What do you remember most?
Well, what really stood out in this extraordinary trial was, names like Judge Lance Ito and Cato Kalin. They became household names. And, this was a phenomenon that consumed the nation. And then, after months and months of testimony, none of us expected when, after just a few hours of deliberation, the jury came back with a verdict. And then, that verdict was read, not guilty. I think even on those who welcomed that, you could see the shock on their faces, Nora.
John Blackstone, thank you so much. We want to turn now to the weather with another round of powerful storms sweeping across the southeast. 2 confirmed tornadoes touched down in Florida today, while the rest of the region is dealing with pounding thunderstorms, hail, and flash flooding. CBS's Tom Hansen reports it's all part of the same system that's now blamed for 2 deaths.
We have a confirmed tornado.
This homeowner capturing a tornado moving towards his neighborhood outside of St. Augustine, Florida this afternoon. The storm sending backyard furniture flying across yards.
You're dead, man.
Overnight in Tallahassee, police pulling 3 people from rising floodwaters. But west in Slidell, Louisiana, the damage far more severe.
Big tornado.
After an EF2 tornado with winds over 120 miles per hour blew through the city, ripping the roof off this apartment complex. Today, workers clearing fallen 100-foot trees ripped from their roots.
It sounds like a freight train when it hits.
Terrified employees of ECO Builders somehow walked away unharmed from the mangled remnants of their building.
Within seconds of making it in, it took the shock.
Sheriff Randy Smith is amazed there were no serious injuries.
This is the worst that I've seen from a tornado standpoint here in our parish.
More than half of residents of Slidell are without power. Schools are also closed. And farther west in Kirbyville, Texas, several horses rescued from a corral, their owner using a boat to get them to safety. And back here in Slidell, residents tell us that they rarely ever see tornadoes, but CBS News analyzed data from the National Weather Service over the past 50 years and found tornadoes are happening more frequently and earlier in the U.S. Nora?
Tom Hansen, thank you very much. For the forecast on where these storms are headed next, let's bring in meteorologist Chris Warren from our partners at the Weather Channel. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Nora. Watching a severe weather threat unfold across the Ohio Valley and the Northeast, including the threat for tornadoes. Tonight, areas in red tonight have a better chance for seeing some of the stronger storms. The threat for the strong storms will come to an end during the overnight hours, but still thunderstorms could cause some issues during the day into the evening tomorrow throughout parts of the Northeast. And then already looking ahead to early next week, seeing the ingredients come together, moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, warmer temperatures creating an environment that's favorable for the development of thunderstorms. And already, Nora, it looks like we could see a significant severe weather event here on Monday, continuing into Tuesday.
Good information, Chris Warren. Thank you. Tonight, the stunning revelation that more than $16 million was stolen from baseball's biggest star. The former interpreter for LA Dodgers player Shohei Ohtani has been charged with federal bank fraud for allegedly stealing millions to cover illegal gambling debts. CBS's Adam Yamaguchi has details on the evidence, including the interpreter's betting text messages.
Today, federal prosecutors laid out in detail how Ippei Mizuhara allegedly fleeced millions from the LA Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani.
Mr. Mitsuhara had unique access to Mr. Ohtani's finances. Mr. Mitsuhara used and abused that position of trust in order to plunder Mr. Ohtani's bank account to the tune of over $16 million.
According to the complaint filed in the Central District of California, these texts were sent between Mizuhara to the bookie, starting at the end of 2021. On or about January 15, 2022, Mizuhara told bookmaker 2, "I lost it all. LOL. Can you ask if you can bump me $50K? That will be my last one for a while if I lose it." U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada said Mizuhara used his position of trust to steal.
Mr. Ohtani is considered a victim in this case.
Ohtani inked a $700 million 10-year deal with the Dodgers last December. Mizuhara had been by the player's side as his voice for years.
What is fair to say is that Mr. Mitsuhara was the gatekeeper for Mr. Ohtani's finances.
IRS Special Agent in Charge Tyler Hatcher said Mizuhara identified himself as Ohtani to bank officials.
How did he go about impersonating Ohtani?
Basically, he was with him everywhere, and when you have that kind of access, you're going to know the answers to questions.
Last month, the Dodgers fired Mizuhara. Then Ohtani read a statement with a new interpreter.
I'm very saddened and shocked that someone who I'm trusted has done this.
Mizuhara has agreed to self-surrender to federal authorities tomorrow, and if convicted, he could face 3 decades in prison. Meanwhile, on the field, there's no appearance that this has impacted Ohtani, as he seems to be living up to the Dodgers' high expectations. Nora?
It's quite a story. Adam Yamaguchi, thank you so much. The Biden campaign launched a 7-figure ad buy in Arizona today that focuses on abortion. The Grand Canyon state is now the epicenter in the battle over reproductive rights after that state's Supreme Court upheld a Civil War-era law that bans all abortions except to save the life of the mother. Abortion is currently legal until 15 weeks. CBS's Janet Shamlian takes a look at those already being impacted.
This is the busiest abortion clinic in Arizona, according to Dr. Gabriel Goodrick, seeing some 350 patients a month. But now Goodrick says she's worried about what could happen.
We provide an essential healthcare service for the patients of Arizona, and if we can't provide that, they're going to be lost. They're going to be in danger.
Efforts Wednesday in the state legislature to repeal the newly revived law were shut down by Republicans. The Arizona House Speaker saying, Democrats are so eager to enshrine in our state constitution a right to kill unborn children, we are going to take the time needed to listen to our constituents. Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs.
I'm ready to do whatever it takes to get the 1864 ban repealed.
The group Arizona for Abortion Access says it's gathered enough signatures for a November ballot initiative allowing abortions up to around 24 weeks. Nurse Ashley Fearing has been helping the effort.
It is far more dangerous to make abortions illegal and have abortions go underground, because I will tell you that people will not stop getting abortions.
An anti-abortion rights group is mounting a campaign against the ballot initiative.
This amendment would be absolutely catastrophic for the health of women and girls.
Most abortions take place at 15 weeks or less. Only a very small number take place 21 weeks or later. The timeline of when the new law could take effect is unclear. Dr. Goodrick says when it does, it will be a dangerous time for women.
It will harm a tremendous amount of Arizonans, and no, it'll be terrible.
As politicians continue to weigh in on the ruling, Vice President Kamala Harris will be here in Arizona tomorrow for a campaign event discussing what the White House calls the fight for reproductive freedoms. Nora?
Janet Chamlian, thank you. With tensions rising in the Middle East, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called Israel's defense minister today as both countries brace for an attack from Iran, which could come at any time. Iranian officials, including its supreme leader, have been threatening to retaliate against Israel for an attack in Syria last week that killed a top Iranian general. Back here in Washington, FBI Director Christopher Wray issued a stark warning today, telling Congress there is growing fear among law enforcement of a coordinated attack inside the U.S. Wray said the most immediate concern is that lone wolves will draw, quote, twisted inspiration from what's happening in the Middle East. But now the FBI is increasingly worried about an organized plot like the ISIS-K attack on a concert hall in Moscow last month. Tonight, the Biden administration is taking the most significant step to strengthen background checks for gun purchases in more than 30 years. The Justice Department today announcing a new rule that aims to close the so-called gun show loophole. CBS Scott McFarland has the new details.
The nation's 80,000 licensed gun sellers already run background checks on buyers. The new rule announced by the Biden administration will now require unlicensed dealers selling at gun shows or online to do the same.
Do you have a sense of how many there are? Hundreds, thousands of unlicensed dealers?
By the things we're seeing, there are tens of thousands of unlicensed dealers in firearms out there.
The ATF says the loophole is exploited by felons and Mexican drug cartels.
That's how an increasing number of firearms are getting to the street in the hands of the wrong people and being used to shoot and kill people.
A recent government report found that guns trafficked through unlicensed dealers were used in 368 shootings over 5 years.
It won't have saved my son or what happened at Sandy Hook, but it will help in so many other occasions.
Nicole Hockley's son Dylan was killed in the Sandy Hook school shooting in Connecticut in 2012.
The amount of crimes that have happened through trafficking of guns that are bought through illegal means without background checks is huge.
A bipartisan gun safety law passed after the shootings at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas 2 years ago empowered the ATF to write today's rule. But one Republican who helped draft the bill says the Biden administration went too far.
It'll take 20 years to recover from this crap.
Arguing it'll stop law-abiding citizens from buying guns.
We were bipartisan. They're bipartisan hacks, and this will be used as an example of why they don't trust an administration to do it in the future.
Republican senators say they'll try to pass a new law to block this rule, but that stands no chance in the Democratic-controlled U.S. Senate. The White House also predicts legal challenges. The Gun Owners of America have threatened suit, but Nora, this rule takes effect 1 month from today.
It's a really interesting story. Scott McFarland, thank you. 3 castaways are rescued from a remote island in the Pacific. Wait till you hear how officials found them. That's next.
मास्टर मोल्टी फोम ले आया है साल की सबसे बड़ी ऑफर, रमजान असली रिप्लेसमेंट ऑफर।
A new report is raising health concerns about Lunchables, the prepackaged boxed meals popular with parents for their convenience and introduced to school cafeterias across the country last year. We get details now from CBS's Nancy Chen.
The popular longtime lunch staple, being called out by Consumer Reports for what it says were high levels of sodium, lead, and other heavy metals found in store-bought versions. The group even asking the federal government to take them out of the menus of millions of kids through the federal school lunch program.
How high were the levels of lead and cadmium that you saw?
It ranged from as low as 7% to as high as over 70%. But it's important to note that the versions that are made available for the school lunch program were in the 70% range.
Consumer Reports said one package tested at 74% of the maximum lead allowed per day in California under what it calls the most protective state law.
There's no safe level for lead for kids. And so when you're exposing this much to them at such an early age, it can really increase the risk later on in life.
In a statement, Kraft Heinz, the manufacturer of Lunchables products, said lead and cadmium occur naturally in the environment and called the Consumer Reports study misleading, causing undue concern over the safety of our products, something we take seriously. All our products tested well below the acceptable limits. Dietitian Arlene Stein.
What do you recommend parents do?
One option would be that you try and balance out the rest of the day with healthier things, and not having juice with it, drinking water.
Developing healthy habits that will last for years to come. Nancy Chen, CBS News, New York.
Heart of America is next with a look at one of the legendary voices of CBS Sports, Vern Lundquist, ahead of his final Masters. Finally, tonight's Heart of America. Today marked the first round of the 88th Masters. It also marks the final tournament for one iconic voice.
In your life have you seen anything like that? Yes, sir!
Longtime CBS Sports commentator Vern Lundquist is retiring at the end of this year's tournament, his 40th at Augusta National. For more than half a century, Lundquist has been on the sidelines for some of the biggest moments in sports, including the NFL, college football, and basketball. From the Cowboys' heartbreak in Super Bowl 13 to Duke's triumph in 1992's March Madness, Lundquist has been there with the perfect call each time. And while this will be his last time at Augusta, his voice will be synonymous with the Masters forever. Vern Lundquist, tonight's Heart of America. Looking forward to watching the Masters this weekend. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.
Mr. Bezos, will you be donating to my campaign this year? Hello.
Robert, how do you feel about the election?
De Niro, who tried to carry on his on-screen tough guy persona to politics by once saying that he wanted to punch Trump in the mouth. Nice dinner guest. Jeff Bezos, of course, yet another billionaire globalist for Biden. The climate change crusaders flew into D.C. on their private jets to attend Biden's state dinner with the Japanese prime minister. And what was Trump up to yesterday?
I have 30 milkshakes and also some chicken. I'm going to take care of the customers. This is good. Making a lot of money. Hello, everybody. Get ready for a milkshake. I got plenty of them.
I don't care what the media tells you, Mr. Trump.
Thanks.
Okay, 4 p.m. We've been 4 p.m.
Come here, let me give you a...
Trump with the working people, Biden hobnobbing with the elites. Joining me now, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Senator, I love those split screens. It really does tell the tale, but why are so many of the big name billionaires working so hard to support Biden?
Well, for the simple reason, Laura, that their policies have benefited, the Biden administration policies have benefited billionaires, whereas Trump's policies benefited working people. So the contrast is really striking. If you think about what the elites in this country are asking for, they're asking for more cheap labor through unlimited immigration. They're asking for the end to any kind of tariff that would protect working class jobs and manufacturing. And of course, the Biden administration has been giving them that, and the Democratic Party has been giving them that for 30 years. Contrast that to Donald Trump at Chick-fil-A yesterday. Obviously, in that store, disproportionately black workforce. And if you look at the data on illegal immigration, Laura, it consistently shows that black Americans are the ones who suffer the most from unchecked migration because they're the ones who face the most wage competition from illegal immigration. So the contrast could not be clearer. The people's president trying to raise your wages and deliver prosperity, and Joe Biden hobnobbing with the billionaires because those are the people who benefit from his policies.
Now, there's a lot of talk about you, Senator, in the vice presidential speculation for Trump. I know he had you on his list, and you know if there's a list, but he said there was kind of a list, and you're on it. I know you're going to be very diplomatic, but it says that you're right up there. Reaction tonight to this new report.
Well, Laura, I've actually never spoken to the president about VP speculation. My simple answer is I want to help him however I can. If he asked me, of course, I would think seriously about it. It would be a great honor. I also am happy to support the agenda in the United States Senate. And regardless, Laura, remember, my job is to serve the people of Ohio. Whether it's supporting Trump's agenda in the Senate or serving in some other role, we have got to bring good manufacturing jobs, good prosperity to the people of Ohio and the American heartland. For 40 years, we had a bipartisan consensus to ship jobs overseas, to bring unchecked migration. Trump stopped that. And the real question for the Republican Party is whether we follow that lead and double down on that winning agenda, or do we try to go back to the old ways? And unfortunately, Laura, as you know as well as I do, there is a critical component of the old guard of the Republican Party that wants to go back to the old ways. More immigration, more war, less good wages for American workers. Thank God Trump is there to push back against it.
Well, the Ukraine funding. And there's news tonight that we have more trouble on the border, Senator. NBC News reporting that an illegal immigrant on the terror watch list spent nearly a year inside the United States after being apprehended and released by Border Patrol agents last year. He was arrested last month and released again by an immigration judge who was not told he was a national security threat. Very quickly, Senator, this could end tragically for the United States.
Oh, I think it will, and tragically, I hate to say it, Laura, there's going to be a major terrorist attack because of Joe Biden's open border. Hope to God that we're able to prevent it, but we are in a very, very vulnerable position because of this open border. Laura, 15 miles from where I grew up in southern Ohio, there was an illegal immigrant arrested for murder who had been deported 7 times. You can't make this stuff up.
No.
We've got to close down
Senator.
that border.
Senator, thank you. Great to see you tonight.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it.
Tonight, the death of O.J. Simpson, the former murder defendant, disgraced football star and actor dying of cancer. Dangerous weather taking aim at the Northeast, and the staggering sum Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter is charged with stealing. First, O.J. Simpson dying of cancer, the famous murder defendant at the center of the so-called trial of the century. Simpson charged with the brutal murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ron Goldman. The slow-speed chase watched by 95 million people on live television. His arrest, trial, and stunning acquittal all playing out before America. His later conviction and parole in 2017 in a separate case. A remarkable fall from grace. The Goldman family reacting tonight. Matt Gutman in Los Angeles. Dramatic home security video capturing the moment a tornado strikes in Florida, sending debris flying in this backyard. Tornado and flood watches from the Midwest to the Northeast. Heavy rain and winds gusting up to 70 miles per hour. The system now making its way from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to New York. Rob Marciano timing it out. U.S. officials tonight warning embassy personnel in Israel to be on alert amid fears that an attack from Iran on Israel is imminent. Iran vowing to retaliate for Israel's airstrike, killing several military leaders at its consulate in Syria. Mary Bruce at the White House. The abortion battle in Arizona, 24 hours after Republicans blocked Democrats from repealing the 160-year-old abortion ban. Doctors already describing chaos and confusion. Rachel Scott in Arizona. Tonight, the former interpreter for the Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani, now accused of stealing even more than first reported. $16 million from one of baseball's biggest stars to pay off his own gambling debts. 3 castaways stranded on a deserted island in the Pacific for more than a week. Their resourceful signs for help finally getting them rescued. And America's Strong tonight, the family reunion. The dog missing for 8 months, found more than 2,000 miles away.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, This is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday night. I'm Whit Johnson in for David. And we begin with the death of O.J. Simpson, the football star and actor whose trial for the murder of his ex-wife and her friend riveted and divided the nation. The entire saga playing out on national TV. This is the moment in 1994 when O.J. Simpson's life went global. Police had just named him a suspect in those brutal murders. He then led them on a slow-speed chase. Network TV breaking in, covering it for hours. 95 million people watching. The so-called trial of the century was also televised last 11 months since lawyers and the Green Team, putting tables of the prosecution and police, casting doubt on key pieces of evidence, including the bloody glove found at the scene. Since lawyers insisting over and over, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And after they did, Simpson not guilty after deliberating for just 4 hours. The verdict, a split-screen moment for America, exposing the hidden fault lines of race, celebrity, wealth, and justice. That's the today. ABC national correspondent, please talk in Los Angeles.
Tonight, O.J. Simpson, the most polarizing figures in American history, died of cancer, age 76. O.J. succumbed to cancer, was run by his children and grandchildren. There's 2 months after statistical fans, he was on the net in this final video. O.J. Simpson sprinted the Hall of Fame as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Known as the Juice, he transcended sports, sort of famous, loved sportscaster. He lost as an actor and TV pitchman, but no question about 1994 after Bruce Lee murders his ex-wife Nicole and her friend, Mom James Simpson is charged with murder. Case 6 is covered 9 million 2 million watches slow speed chase along LA freeways. Police stealing O.J. in his brother. American Friday, Yale coverage of the trial. Insistent lawyers out the team arguing he was framed by witness police. That unforgettable moment, O.J. trial on his loss.
Remember these words. If it doesn't fit, you must quit.
Prosecutor Simpson physically abused Nicole for years, playing her 911 calls. But again, prosecutors unable to convince the jury. That not guilty across the street across the country, laying bare in ways of the fire. Like here in August, public picture. Made Black American saw individual racism and White American son to be exonerated, and 2 families left devastated.
Ron and Nicole were butchered.
Simpson was not liable for death, or to pay $33 million damages, but he did little.
This is something that would be attached to me because my life. I truly think that the truth will come out.
So he trusts on the manuscript, if I get which called a hypothetical account of the murder, he did not commit. Both families outraged. A judge ordered the Russian published, they published her if I get confession of the years later, their pain still walked.
Lessons? What years later? Not for me. He's a vicious murderer, narcissist.
Tonight, both families saying the news of Ron Stewart's passing is a complicated notion that reminds us that the journey for grief is not 13 years after the murders, he victims in a different case. Robbery in 2007, still he's on media. He served 9 years playing role in 2017, settling down in Ocean Boy line in Las Vegas.
And back when the Los Angeles, Matt, the Brown spot for years. We got a conversation that's still good. Where does that stand now?
The Brown family has been motivated 5 years, hoping to maintain a relationship with their grandchildren, but both sons have very little of that $33 million still settlement. Judge, despite Simpson and his murder, from spotting news in the state, they have never stopped fighting for family.
From Marvel cases, lasting impact on this back and forth. Thank you. Now the other news this Thursday night, zero weather threat has become on this tornado slaying state Florida today. 14 confirmed. In the past 2 days, and a flash flood emergency in Tallahassee overnight. Dramatic high water rescue. As this storm is on the move, taking aim in the northeast. ABC senior meteorologist Bob tracking all.
Tonight, a tornado, a massive tornado across the Florida. 9 trees left twigs. Down in home south of Jacksonville.
This is right on scene. So if you have instructed immediately,
Home security camera video showing the moment the first report to his backyard. Sending brief flying in that pool. Arguing tight under, wrapped around a tree. $1 million tonight for more tornadoes. Getting in the flash flood
Plus setting financial goals before hitting the big 4-0.
If you didn't start earlier, you might have to make some adjustments.
Money Mike, Saturday on CNA.
This April, sow the seeds of hope and cultivate dreams of a brighter, greener future. Flood emergency in Tallahassee overnight, leading to high water rescues.
You're done, man.
Watch as officers use a rope to guide this family to safety in rushing waist-deep water.
Oh my God.
The same deadly storms penetrate 14 confirmed pushers from Texas to Florida over the past 40 hours, now barreling in the northeast.
So the right about the tornadoes in Louisiana. Rob, how about this storm right now? Well, the names are before North flashlight and watch Ohio is West Virginia was really good Charles Henry and the flashlight right now. The most is like standing filling in all that in the northeast like DC filling your order on your roof as well. On the showers running. We really got 40 miles an hour and no all the way to the center. With and tracking for thank you. Special coordination for restrictions for U.S. employees and their families in Israel. This one comes to the concern they want to retaliate for Israel's attacking consulate in Syria. If you see passport under Bruce down very sources say Ryan Slack and
Which I administration is for Iran to strike Israel hotly unfold in the coming days. The president has warned Iran is running a significant attack and we have learned military command released in Israel to discuss this threat. The state part is also being travel restriction on the personnel in Israel. Iran has now retaliated. The attack on consulate in Syria last week to kill several Iranian commanders. This is exactly the kind of escalation the president has tried for months to avoid. The big question now, how will the U.S. respond to an attack by Iran? Press White House on this with now being declared.
Our members will stand by thank you. Now the abortion battle in Arizona after the Supreme Court ruled law from 1864 that all abortions will take effect in a matter of weeks. State lawmakers left town without taking action. There's already chaos and confusion. It's Scott in Arizona tonight.
Tonight, Arizona dominated Friday chaos and confusion. After the state high court upheld a 160-year-old law banning abortion in all cases, except for the line of the mother. Arizona state legislature decided to repeal the law. Republicans blocked that effort. And Dr. Goodrick said the impact is already being felt. What have you been experiencing the last 40 hours inside the Senate? Patient already saying they're saying abortions through. I mean, it's something online. Arizona Democrat Attorney General Chris says she will enforce the law, but it seems she can't stop local prosecutors. I would urge Arizonans who are pregnant to make a plan. I can't believe I'm having to say that, but it's time to make a plan. For 60 days from now, something goes wrong, an abortion to be one abortion. So thinking about California, Nevada, and Mexico, Colorado. Which will be decided issue in November. Arizona has made 13 other states put abortion on the ballot, and the law has been flash when they reach the White House, where Arizona is the key battleground. Donald Trump's filed with 3 of the 5 Supreme Court justices to overturn Roe v. Wade, but sending political quicksand. He has said abortion should be left to states. Now Trump said Arizona went too far. The president Biden says like justice to overturn Roe. Trump cleared the way for 21 states to ban or severe access to abortion. Inside the state, these billboards going up. Abortion is in Arizona, thanks to Donald Trump. He won't stop until it's nationwide. There's a lot of uncertainty here in Arizona. The Supreme Court put that ruling on for 14 days, but the state attorney general tells me that the additional 45 days for law will go into effect because a separate lawsuit. As the White House, they want the additional spotlight by Senate as Arizona tomorrow.
For Scott and thank you. Now the Biden administration taking action on gun safety. The new rule requiring background checks on buyers at gun shows. Here's Chief Justice Ross. Your thoughts.
Tonight, the Biden administration requiring more firearms dealers to be licensed by the federal government. Closing the so-called gun show loophole. They allow certain dealers to sell firearms without conducting background checks.
Today, Justice Department issued one gun regulations in days.
According to the White House, over 20,000 licensed gun sellers do business online or gun shows, particularly allowing domestic abusers for guns access to guns without background checks.
Today's action furthers the Biden administration's efforts to stop the legal flow of guns and hold those who supply firearms used in crime accountable. But there's still much work to be done.
With this fraudulent gun deal, DOJ administration is expecting litigation to try to block this new policy. The NRA says tonight they are working to use all means available to stop this unlawful rule.
Your thoughts. Thank you. Good details of federal charges against the former interpreter of Major League Baseball star Shohei Ohtani. Prosecutor accused the former interpreter of betraying the trust, robbing him of a staggering $16 million out of his gambling debt. Here's Chief Justice
Tonight, federal authorities charging the former interpreter of baseball superstar Shohei Ohtani with stealing more than $16 million to pay gambling debts. Claiming Los Angeles judge remain wrongdoing. Mr. Ohtani is considered a victim in this case. There's no evidence to indicate Mr. Ohtani authorized the over $16 million transfers. Authorities say these are committed fraud on a massive scale. Ideas of defective nature, alleging he helped Ohtani witness English, set up the U.S. bank account where his multi-million-dollar settlement was deposited. The emperor later impersonated Ohtani to steal the account. How is that Shohei Ohtani knows so much about guns? Mr. Ohtani the very detailed to make sure he can control the account and the known settlement of the Four records saying these are likely approximately 19,000 wages from December 2021 to January this year, ranging from $10 to $160,000 per debt. The interpreter then lost of $40 million, but saying they did not reflect any bets on baseball games. These are alleged evidence to steal from Ohtani. That's what he's saying. Technically, I did steal him. It's all over for me. He's fighting for his tomorrow. Witnessing incredible amount of thank you. Welcome back. The amazing rescue in the Pacific Fleet Castaway found on a desert island, leaving signs of help on the beach. And using a tow truck driver car, blocked traffic. Next night, a remote rescue in the Pacific. Coast Guard saving 3 fishermen stranded on a remote island in the 7 days of Indonesia. The boat was damaged by rough waves. They used palm tree branches to signs of help. A Navy jet flying up in the sky. It's time for a week before being found. Welcome back. The tow truck driver used to try to car while they were riding. To the next night, in San Francisco, using a tow truck driver trying to flip their car while they were riding. Finishers of the tow truck continuing to people stop at intersection. Couple getaway. The tow truck chasing them for several blocks. It's a plain police report. The company has not commented. Welcome back. The family dog missing from months. Surprise unit 22,000 miles away.
AC will do that with TV North. South Texas. Not telling us. So much analysis. Wrapping you up.
Finally, tonight, America's family dog missing and a surprise phone call for a cross country.
This is the emotional moment. Listen on your are reunited
Once I got elected as Senator of the century, O.J. Simpson is dead 76. Football Hall of Famer became Hollywood star. O.J. started in 1994 with a brutal murder. Like the Cole Brown and friend Ron Goldman. It was all playing out on 1980 like Ron case. Simpson's arrested for trial, but and ultimately not guilty verdict. Simpson's family remains cancer. This is final moments and reaction to the Goldman family. Also got the Arizona's new pro-abortion ban. The arrested Bush President Biden became blamed before President Trump takes credit. But no Trump voted. The tornado shutting down before leaving a trail of damage, high water use. As heavyweight moves up the East Coast. Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter charged with bank fraud and staggering about 50 sold $16 million to the MLB superstar. How? What did it? And RBC is exclusive nearly a year after he was shot in the head. Randy Wardell. Now speaking out. The mental side now this week. And he forgive the man who shot. This is ABC News with Lester Holt. Good evening and welcome. The news breaking today that O.J. Simpson has died without vivid memories from many Americans who were captivated by seemingly irresistible self during the 1990s. And like the story of charming, intelligent football star turned actor and pitchman who was accused of the 1994 murders of his ex-wife and her friend. As we recorded, the most sensational and closely followed criminal trial of the last century. The not guilty verdict left the country sharply divided. Turns like white bungo. It doesn't fit. Slow speed chase. All it means before it was such a thing. Simpson's family nothing's death today coming after a battle with cancer. Tonight came death and life. And then O.J. Simpson involving sharp reactions. Sydney fan reports.
The trial of the century and the death today of the man at the center, O.J. Simpson, brings back a long legacy of trial that concluded January 30 years ago.
We dream of highlight the video for Simpson not guilty of murder.
Not guilty verdict in the brutal murders of his former wife and mother of his two children, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman, reverberated around the country. Met by outrage by many believed guilty of the amount of evidence that proved it.
This prosecution team didn't lose today. People believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served.
How many nightmare cheered what they saw as justice so often denied in the community finally done. The mission had been captivated just 5 days after murders on Friday night when 95 million TV viewers watched the Simpson and white Bronco driven by 4 teammates let officers on an hours-long low-speed chase, reportedly holding a gun to his own head.
He had been charged with 2 counts of homicide.
Finally, he surrendered to police. 3 months into the trial, which was broadcast daily, much following each day's testimony, judging the evidence and gave him trial himself. The trial highlighted many of the fractures in the country's legal system, bringing together celebrity race and the power of money. The defense team of the Dream Team, when made up of super lawyers, were able to undermine the state scientific evidence, while also capturing their attention with their mastery of courtroom theatrics. And a jury took a man who lived a trial in another period and accomplished life. He rose to power, becoming one of the greatest football players ever played the game. A college star, UFC, Heisman Trophy winner, and a represented player with Buffalo Bills, who became known as the Juice. The non-star commercial. And television movies. And while the murder, his life afterwards spiraled downwards. And still lawsuits restored today with $33 million to victims' families. Look at that, left unpaid. He returned to court multiple times in the next several years for track violations, even hiring MTV. But it was on video in 2008. Simpson said he was taking back personal stolen property, but ultimately sent him to prison. He served 9 years. He died yesterday at 76 from cancer. His family said he was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. Fred Goldman, Ron Goldman's father, did not mince words. His no weight loss world is a further reminder of wrongs being wrongs. Well, that's why I said the artist is the jury innocence. They found him not guilty, and that is different. Acquittal, this case became part of his own prison, the downward spiral of his life afterwards. Test.
Right, so you for more 22 dateline people versus O.J. Simpson tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern, swinging on News Now. We're trying to explain battle of abortion. Biden campaign counting on the Arizona court ruling on a sweeping silverware abortion ban to give them an edge, while former President Trump is also speaking out. Here's Texas.
A new aggressive push tonight for the president.
Power. What's news next?
A new ad lib. His predecessor for Arizona's controversial abortion ban.
Your body and your decisions belong to you, not the government, not Donald Trump. I'll fight like I'll get your back.
On the Arizona ruling, 1864 law banning all abortions, but the extent of those life. Biden campaigns with Republicans on defense, and Mr. Trump challenges early Democrats have political advantage.
The only issue they have is on abortion, and now all I say is the states are handling it.
The Democrats trying to distract from the economy and immigration, both consistently the most important issue rulers. The polls show Americans prefer Mr. President Biden by about 20 points on the economy, 30 points on the border. Even though Mr. Trump opposes the Arizona abortion ban and national ban, he's also taking credit for overturning Roe v. Wade, as in which he very restrictive, broadly unpopular abortion limits. He and Republicans now trying to fight the illegal Arizona security.
A full ban on abortion. Some people are. The issue is not banning abortion or not vaccine.
The bans oppose Arizona anger during action. You see where the case to the ban field.
I immediately called for a repeal of the ban, and I think second Republicans are seeing this is the election.
As the lawyers pass repeal next week before bans go into effect later this spring.
We're tracking severe storms moving on the East Coast tonight. And a confirmed tornado today in northern Florida. Powerful winds tearing through the backyard, waiting on lawn furniture and debris. First responders using boats to rescue stranded residents. Storms moving north, flooding Charleston and Savannah. Let's find out our exclusive report on potential terror threat here at home. Rolling down the terror watch list who crossed the southern border with arrested and released in the U.S. and he's not the only one. Here's Julie Lee.
Tonight, no longer in the crisis. Another veteran from the southern border, the terror organization, who was released in the U.S. border according to U.S. officials. 48 people on the illegal crossing California last year. His name is U.S. terror watch list. Identifying him as a terror group that killed Americans in Afghanistan. Where it is suspected of most of the time of the black information according to U.S. officials. CT police have contact the FBI organization customs enforcement officials list. Terms of coverage and border in the U.S. according to officials. After all this year, I represented here at the same time. When the court U.S. officials, I think it was held classified information that was terrorized. A judge ordered release on $12,000 fine, which he said was free last month. Harvard takes one of the 3 incidents in the past 2 years involving suspected terrorists being released by the border protection. According to the DHS General Congress, it comes as the 95th crisis in the border crisis, including border Trump. The percentage of terror watches apprehended U.S. small fraction of all American count. 0.02% of Biden, 0.05% of the administration.
8 terrorists are personally named in the country.
We passed 4 times officials in the administration. That found the terror group released in the U.S. by DHS.
There's a large capacity of commercial ice federal enforcement in the agency. We have 5 men on board.
But our fears about 10,000 migrants never dated to the border. The border chief recently and national security threat. And the FBI director more explorers with ISIS.
There is a particular network that has some of the overseas facilitators of some network have ISIS ties. We're very concerned about. During the Homeland Security just responded to us about this.
Well, if they can't comment on board, they're all necessary steps for public safety. If they have been later found associated with national security concern, they will take appropriate action. Tonight, all remains unchanged, potentially somebody else.
Thank you. Kansas City Chief Service Rice has been warned out for the West after a high-speed car crash in Dallas. The when and where remains uncertain. It's not clear. We get more from Thompson.
NFL wide receiver Rice has surrendered to police on 8 felony charges. Just 24 hours after arrest, one of the this high-speed crash on Dallas Expressway last month. Rice admitted to behind the wheel of 1 cars that police say caused the 60-year crash. The Super Bowl champion and another driver charged with aggravated assault, collision involving serious bodily injury, and 6 counts of collision involving injury. Altogether, Crenshaw will have 35 years in prison after $25,000 fine if convicted. Rice is attorney said they are cooperating with authorities, and Rice takes full responsibility for his actions, which police say injured 4 people. The warrants come nearly 2 weeks after the dangerous crash, which the NFL star left the scene, and the Dallas police chief said the investigation was thorough and fair. Meanwhile, the NFL says it's continuing to monitor all developments. We are learning that Rice has been taken into custody and expected to walk out soon. Lester?
It's 60 seconds of charge filing against Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter and staggering. Money now used to steal it. They call superstar. That's why this. Federal prosecutors announced the former interpreter for Los Angeles Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani is being charged with bank fraud. Here's Liz Royce.
Tonight, federal authorities charged Shohei Ohtani's former president with fraud with big fraud, alleging he stole $16 million from the baseball superstar.
Mr. Ohtani did all this to feed insatiable appetite for legal sports.
Prosecutors think Ohtani described Ohtani's de facto manager, paying $19,000 in legal bookmaker. He used a bank account Ohtani, which Ohtani said had access to. At times, he even impersonated Ohtani's wire transfer approved.
Mr. Ohtani used that position of trust in order to take advantage of Mr. Ohtani.
Well, none of the baseball authorities think Ohtani with $40 million gambling at 2021-2024. Texas Detective Prosecutors showing the names of police, Ohtani saying it's all over me. The Dodgers are recently telling reporters through a new translator that he was due to fight his friend.
I'm very sad and shocked that someone who I'm trusted has done this.
Authorities saying there's no evidence Ohtani was aware of his hard actions.
Mr. Ohtani is considered a victim in this case.
And Ohtani claimed Ohtani Dodgers tomorrow. Prosecutors realize 4 court hearings tomorrow. If they take this to 30%.
Liz Royce, thank you. Up next, news story via social media. Or exclusive images. Mark Zuckerberg's Meta said it's still protected. Facing pressure from family lawmakers met today and announced testing new features to prevent the sexual exploitation of children. Sam Starr got an exclusive look at how they work in our series Kids Under Pressure.
After the prison, the largely enough to protect users from sexual exploitation, Tech announced it's testing tools for Instagram, sexual or coercive exploitation, and photo and blackmail, and keep it private. And as low head of safety. Reviewing technology and signals to identify potentially suspicious sexual accounts and prevent messaging with marriage. We're focused on intimate. She was exclusive how it would work. If user receives some information, it would be heard first. But also get a message. Don't feel pressure to respond. The center may be confident to reconsider and adoption consent. This will automatically turn off users under 18. They'll also register to self down, which will fire with intimate themselves online. The outcome of this saying the website will the whole thing is about the show. Mary Lee was there. She said just hours. The person was victim of sexual exploitation on Facebook. I think it's a PR stunt all around. Parents think that they're safe on that overall. None of this is sexual exploitation by anyone. The next child. Why should parents leave? They become more about a child than about one. Well, here's what my parents know is that I'm parent. We care deeply about providing a safe, age-appropriate, positive
live experience. Also, no, family house is not your best interest for for anything else I want to see experience. Even if it is just years, yeah, that experience will make people leave our platform. That's what
Next week, exclusively with Ralph Yarrow, teen was shot by the wrong doorbell. The important message. Finding on ABC exclusive, nearly a year after Ralph Yarrow, teen from Kansas City, was shot by the wrong doorbell. And 20 hopes spoke with him and his family and friends about the trial. He is still family rich.
1 year ago, Ralph Yarrow was just 16 years old. He loved each walks with family, jumping on trampolines, and playing as high school man. That was Ralph before he was 23. This is Ralph now.
So that brings me to the by the
For our change, we ran the wrong home while trying to get peace with others. 85-year-old James West shot him twice in the head and arm. Ralph survived to leave a miracle. Would you say it's harder to physically recover or mentally recover? Ross started sleeping headaches, always an A student. He now struggles to study. In the last few months, he crashed his car twice. He's learned 6 times he can't sleep. 5 times he sleeps too much.
When you have trauma, initially it's a shock of all of it, but then everything starts to simmer, and then you start to realize how life isn't what it used to be.
Now his friends are struggling to process. He shooting his own town last year. Now Sebastian's killing. And Kansas City chiefs rage shooting.
So constant nagging of much surroundings, your house is done, is very nice.
In October, getting less was by not people. Police was scared to death. We'll stand trial without shooting.
That's also so wonderful. Enjoying his own age.
Ralph had to be considered forgiving man. Who instant Ross's childhood to an end.
Has he ever asked for your forgiveness?
The famous King country. We can't forget. You can't become desensitized.
We are tired of people saying that you don't have thoughts of theirs. We need to get out of your thoughts and your prayers and get your actions.
It's not their sake, they say. The next trial on bike violence in America. Anthony Hamilton, NBC News, Kansas City.
That's my news for this Thursday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester. Please take care of yourself and each other. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.